My sister was the golden child for 26 years, but when I won $500K in the lottery and my family demanded the money, she used a fake identity to steal from me and I had her arrested. Now my parents are begging, but they never saw this coming. I'm 26 years old. I run my own children's clothing business. And I need to tell this story because I basically spent my entire life being invisible to my parents while my sister Nicole was treated like she was the second coming of Christ or something. It's not that I'm bitter or anything. Well, maybe a little. But the truth is, things changed in a way I never imagined, and now I'm here trying to process everything that happened. I guess I should start from the beginning. When we were kids, Nicole is 3 years younger than me. So like, when I was 8, she was 5. And even back then you could already see the difference, you know? My room was basic, like white walls with some posters. I put up myself with scotch tape, a simple bed, and a secondhand desk that I think my parents bought at a garage sale. Nicole's room, on the other hand, looked like it came out of a children's decor magazine, all in pink and purple tones, with a canopy over her bed, matching furniture, and literally an entire wall of toys organized on super elegant white shelves. I had a plastic box where I kept my stuff, most of it birthday gifts from relatives because my parents didn't exactly buy me many toys, let's say. Birthdays were another level, seriously. I remember perfectly Nicole's 10th birthday because it was like an event worthy of a celebrity. My parents rented a pony, a real pony that went around in circles in our backyard. They hired a giant inflatable. There was a table full of candy and cakes and like 20 kids running around everywhere. Nicole was in the center of everything with a new shiny dress, basically living her best life. My 10th birthday, which had been 3 years earlier, was like my parents gave me a box of generic colored pencils from the dollar store and told me happy birthday while we ate frozen pizza at the kitchen table. I'm not exaggerating. It was literally that simple. When I asked them if I could invite some friends that day, my mom said they didn't have the budget for that and that we'd have a family celebration on the weekend, which never happened because they completely forgot. The thing is, I tried not to make a big deal out of all this when I was a kid because, I don't know, I guess I thought maybe there was something wrong with me, like why didn't I deserve the same as Nicole? I tried hard in school, thinking that if I got good grades, my parents would finally pay attention to me, but even when I brought home report cards with straight A's, they barely told me, "That's good, son," or something quick like that, before going back to whatever they were doing. Nicole got a B in math, and it was like she had cured cancer. My parents hugged her and told her how proud they were of her, and we went out to dinner at her favorite restaurant to celebrate. Fast forward to high school because that's when things got even more obvious. I graduated first, obviously, and my graduation day was pretty anticlimactic. My parents went to the ceremony, yes, but they sat in the back and left immediately afterwards without even waiting to take pictures of me in my cap and gown. As a gift, they gave me $50 in a generic envelope that I think they bought at the supermarket on the way to the event. There wasn't even a card inside, just the bill. I thanked them because, well, what else was I going to do? But inside I was destroyed, honestly. 3 years later, when Nicole graduated from high school, it was like the world stopped to celebrate her. My parents organized a party at home with like 50 people. There was a DJ, catering from a really expensive Italian restaurant, and best of all, or worst, depending on how you look at it, was that they gave her a new car. A brand new 2018 Honda Civic, red with a giant bow on top, parked in the driveway. Nicole screamed and cried and hugged our parents like they had hung the moon for her. I was standing there with my cheap beer watching the whole scene thinking, this is a joke, right? Like, I hadn't even had a car in high school. I had used the bus my entire student life, and nobody had considered buying me anything even remotely similar. When I mentioned this to my mom later that night, after everyone left, she looked at me like I was crazy and told me not to be selfish. That Nicole needed the car to go to college, and that I was already an adult working and could buy my own car if I wanted it so badly. I was like 21 at that point, working a minimum wage job at an electronics store, and could barely afford my share of rent in a tiny apartment I shared with 2 roommates. Buying a car wasn't exactly within my financial possibilities, but apparently that didn't matter. College was a completely different story. I went to a state university because it was all I could afford with student loans and some financial aid. It's not that it was a bad school. It was decent, but it definitely wasn't anything special. When I received my acceptance letter and showed it to my parents, my dad barely looked up from his phone and said something like, "Oh, that's good." And that was it. There was no celebration. There was nothing. I signed all the student loan papers myself, found my own housing, basically managed completely on my own. Nicole, on the other hand, applied to a bunch of prestigious universities and got into one that was in the top 20 in the country. I don't remember exactly which one, but it was one of those with names you recognize immediately. The day her acceptance letter arrived, my parents literally opened a bottle of champagne, the good stuff, not the cheap kind they sell at the supermarket, and toasted to Nicole's bright future. My mom cried with happiness. My dad hugged her and told her he always knew she was special, and I was sitting there on the couch wondering what the hell I had to do to receive even a fraction of that emotion and pride. I graduated from college at 22 with a degree in business administration. I got my first, a real job at a medium-sized company where I earned like $40,000 a year, which wasn't bad to start, but it wasn't anything to write home about either. I was proud of myself, honestly, because I had achieved it completely on my own, without help from anyone, paying my student loans little by little each month. I told my parents about my new job, thinking that maybe, just maybe, this time, they'd be proud of me. My mom said, "Congratulations," and then, literally in the same breath, asked me if now that I had a stable job, I could start saving money to help with Nicole's future wedding and expenses. Nicole was like 19 at that point, didn't even have a boyfriend, but apparently my parents were already planning her dream wedding and expected me to contribute financially. I told them I needed to focus on paying my own student loans first and that I was barely getting established, and my dad looked at me with that disappointed face I already knew so well and said something about being selfish and not thinking about family. Like 3 more years passed in this horrible dynamic. I worked, paid my bills, tried to save some money here and there, and basically existed on the periphery of my family. Nicole was still at her expensive university. My parents visited her every 2 months, sent her money constantly, and talked about her all the time like she was their only child. I saw them maybe at Christmas and Thanksgiving, if I was lucky, and the conversations were always superficial, like how's work, fine, and how's Nicole, amazing as always. Then something happened that changed everything. I was 25 and one day, I don't even know why I did it, I bought a lottery ticket at a gas station on my way home from work. It wasn't something I did regularly. Maybe I had bought like 5 tickets in my entire life, but that day I just thought, why not? The numbers came out 2 days later, and I can't even explain the feeling, but I won $500,000. 500,000. I almost passed out when I checked the numbers like 10 times on the official lottery website. The first thing I did, and looking back it was probably a mistake, was call my parents to tell them. I was excited, like I finally had something good to share, something that might make them proud of me or at least happy for me. My mom answered the phone, and when I told her, her first reaction was to scream with excitement, which was nice for like 5 seconds until she said, "Benjamin, this is perfect. This means Nicole can finally go to that graduate program in Europe. She wants so badly." I froze. Not even 30 seconds had passed since I gave them the news of my lottery prize, and they were already planning how to spend it on Nicole. I told my mom this was my money, and that I had my own plans for it, like paying off all my student loans, maybe finally buying myself a decent car, and I had been dreaming forever about starting my own business. I had always been fascinated by children's fashion, specifically dresses for little girls, and I had this vision of creating a unique, quality clothing line that wasn't super expensive, but wasn't those generic things you see in all the big stores either. My mom got serious immediately and told me we needed to talk in person, that this was too important to discuss over the phone. I went to their house that weekend and basically walked into an ambush. My parents and Nicole were sitting there in the living room, and they even had printed papers about the graduate program in London that Nicole wanted to do, complete with the total cost, which was like $80,000 for the entire year, including housing and living expenses. My dad started with his speech about family and how family supports each other, and that I had been blessed with this fortune, not just for me, but to be able to help my sister achieve her dreams. Nicole looked at me with those big eyes and said, "Please, Benjamin, this is my only chance. You know how much this means to me." And I just thought, seriously? Are you seriously asking me to give you basically all my lottery money to finance another one of Nicole's whims? I told them no. That I was sorry, but this money was mine and I had my own plans. Things got ugly fast. My mom started crying, saying I was a cruel and selfish son. My dad stood up and started yelling at me about how I had disappointed them my whole life and that this was my chance to finally do something good for the family. And Nicole straight up called me selfish and told me she always knew I didn't care about her. It was brutal, honestly, but something inside me just clicked. I told them, "You know what? You're right. I'm selfish, and I'm leaving." My dad gave me an ultimatum right there. Told me that if I didn't give them the money for Nicole, not to bother coming back ever. That I wasn't welcome in their house. So I left. I literally stood up, grabbed my keys, and left that house thinking I never see my parents again. And you know what? At that moment, I didn't care as much as I thought I would. The next few months were crazy, but the good kind. I cashed my lottery prize, and after taxes I had like $350,000 left, which was still an insane amount of money for me. I paid off all my student loans in one shot. That feeling was amazing, like seeing that balance at zero after years of monthly payments that felt endless. I bought myself a used but good condition Toyota Camry, nothing fancy but reliable, and then I invested the rest in my business. I hired a lawyer to help me with all the legal part of establishing my company, found a small but quality manufacturer who could produce my designs, and started working on my first collection of dresses for girls. My vision was to create pieces that were special but accessible, with nice fabrics and unique details, but at prices that normal families could afford. Not those $200 per dress things you see in exclusive boutiques. 3 months after leaving my parents' house, I got a call from my mom. I hadn't had any contact with them since that horrible day, and honestly, I had been fine with that, completely focused on my business. My mom sounded sweet on the phone, like asking how I was and saying they missed me, and I knew something was coming. And yeah, after like 5 minutes of trivial conversation, she got to the point. They needed a large loan for Nicole's program in London, because apparently she had been accepted, but they needed the down payment soon. I told them no, that we had already had this conversation and my answer hadn't changed. My mom changed tone immediately, going back to calling me selfish and saying I was a disgrace to the family. I hung up the phone and blocked their numbers. I also blocked Nicole's number because she started sending me text messages telling me I had ruined her life and she would never forgive me. It was hard, I'm not going to lie, but it was also liberating in a weird way. I quit my full-time job like a month later to dedicate myself completely to my business. I had enough money saved to survive while I established everything, and honestly, I had never been so happy. I worked from my apartment, which I had upgraded to a one-bedroom place without roommates for the first time in my life. And little by little, I started building my brand. 6 months after all the initial drama, things were going incredibly well. I had launched my online store with my first collection of like 15 different dress designs, and sales were much better than I had expected. I had a small but loyal group of customers who loved the quality and unique designs, and the reviews I received were super positive. I decided to take the next step and opened a small physical boutique in a local shopping center. Nothing huge, but it was mine, and it was beautiful. The day I opened my boutique was probably one of the proudest days of my life. I had my name on the sign outside, my designs hanging on pretty shelves, and a cash register that would finally process sales in person. I hired 2 part-time employees to help me, both college students who needed flexible jobs, and everything seemed to be falling into place perfectly. Then, like 3 weeks after opening the boutique, one of my employees called me on a Monday morning completely hysterical. Turns out the other employee, a girl named Sarah, had been arrested over the weekend for stealing money from the cash register. We had noticed some small discrepancies in the cash the last 2 weeks, but I had assumed they were honest counting errors, not that someone was literally stealing from us. Sarah had been taking $20 and $50 bills here and there, and apparently she had been doing it since her second week of work. I went to the police station to file the formal complaint and get all the information about the case. And here comes the part I still find hard to process. When an officer showed me Sarah's information. Her real name was Nicole Martinez, but she had given a fake name when she applied for the job. And when I saw her arrest photo, even though she had dyed her hair blonde and had more makeup than I remembered, I recognized her immediately. It was my sister, Nicole. I stood there, staring at the photo, unable to process what I was seeing. My sister, the perfect princess of the family who, according to my parents, never did anything wrong, had been stealing from my business. She had applied for a part-time job at my boutique using a fake name, probably knowing exactly who the owner was, and had been stealing from me for weeks. The officer asked me if I knew her, and I honestly didn't know what to say at first, but I finally admitted, yes, that she was my sister. Turns out Nicole had stolen like $1,200 total during the 3 weeks she worked there, and had been arrested after a mall security guard saw her taking money from the register on a Sunday afternoon when she thought no one was watching. She had theft charges and could face up to a year in jail plus fines depending on how the case proceeded. That same night, I got a call from a number I didn't have blocked, and when I answered, it was my mom crying. Of course, they already knew about Nicole's arrest, and of course now suddenly they wanted to talk to me after months of silence. My mom was begging me through sobs to help Nicole, to pay her bail, to get a good lawyer to defend her, to basically save their perfect daughter from the consequences of her own actions. I asked my mom if she knew that Nicole had been working at my boutique and stealing from me, and she was quiet for a moment before admitting yes, that Nicole had told them her plan to get a job with me using a fake name to try to take some of the money that, according to her, I owed the family. My mom said this like it was completely reasonable, like I was the villain of the story for not having voluntarily given my lottery money. My dad took the phone at some point in the conversation, and his tone was completely different from the last few months, almost pleading. He told me that Nicole had made a terrible mistake, but that she was young, and that ruining her life with a criminal record would be too severe. He asked me, didn't demand this time, but genuinely asked me, to consider helping her at least with bail to get her out of jail while she waited for her hearing. The truth is, I thought a lot about this. Part of me wanted to say no, to let Nicole face the full consequences of what she had done, but another part of me, maybe the part that still remembered when we were kids and played together before everything became so toxic, felt some pity. Not for Nicole necessarily, because what she did was unforgivable, but for the overall situation, which was so sad and dysfunctional. I finally told them I would pay the bail, but only the bail and only this once, and that this didn't mean we were okay or that I forgave what Nicole had done. I made it clear that I would move forward with the criminal charges and that Nicole would have to face the full legal process. My dad accepted the terms, and I went directly to the bail bondsman to pay the $5,000 necessary to get Nicole out of jail. Paying him directly and not giving the money to my parents, because I no longer trusted them with anything. Nicole spent 2 days in jail before they processed the bail, and when she got out, my parents called to thank me, but also to ask if I could help pay for a good defense lawyer. I told them definitely not, that I had already done more than I had to and that the rest was their problem. They could use a public defender or find their own way to pay for a private lawyer, but I wasn't going to finance the legal defense of someone who had stolen from me. What happened next was probably the most surprising thing of all. My parents asked me to meet in person, just the two of them, without Nicole, to talk. I agreed to meet them at a neutral cafe, not at their house and not at my boutique. When I arrived, they both looked tired and old in a way I hadn't noticed before, like all the stress of the last few months had suddenly fallen on them. My mom started talking first, and I'm not gonna lie, it was weird to hear her. She asked for forgiveness, just that simple at first. Sorry for everything. Then she and my dad started talking about how they had handled things with Nicole and me over the years, finally admitting that they had been unfair to me. My dad said they had realized, especially after Nicole's arrest, that they had spoiled her so much that she never learned to be responsible or face consequences, and that in the process, they had completely ignored and minimized me. It was surreal to hear them say these things after 26 years of feeling invisible. My mom cried when she talked about all the times they hadn't celebrated my achievements or acknowledged my efforts. And my dad admitted they had been terrible parents to me, even if they had thought at the time they were doing the right thing. I don't know if it was genuine or if they were just scared about the situation with Nicole and needed my help, but I decided to give them the benefit of the doubt, at least a little. I told them I appreciated the apology, but that things couldn't just go back to how they were before because they had never been good to begin with. I explained that I needed space and time to process everything, and that if they really wanted to try to rebuild some kind of relationship with me, it would have to be on my terms and at my pace. They both accepted this without putting conditions, which was new. It's been like 6 months since that conversation at the cafe. Nicole eventually pleaded guilty to petty theft as part of a deal with the prosecutor's office. Received probation for 2 years, had to do community service, and pay restitution both to me and fines to 2US, the state. I haven't spoken to her at all, and honestly, I have no interest in doing so in the near future, or maybe ever, I don't know yet. With my parents, we've been rebuilding things very slowly. We have family dinners once a month, just the 3 of us without Nicole, and the conversations are weird, but they're improving. They ask me questions about my business and really listen when I tell them. My mom came to the boutique last week and stayed like an hour looking at all the dresses and telling me how proud she was of what I had built. It was the first time in my life I remember hearing her say those words, directed at me. My boutique is doing really well now. I hired 3 new employees, all with full background checks this time, and we're expanding the product line to include some pieces for boys too. I have regular customers who come specifically for my designs, and the online store is growing every month. I achieved what I always wanted to do, build something of my own from scratch, and I did it completely on my own, without anyone's help. Do I feel bad about how things turned out with Nicole? I guess part of me does, because at the end of the day, she's my sister and we grew up together, but another bigger part of me knows this was inevitable given how she was raised. My parents created the monster she became by never setting boundaries or consequences for her, and eventually that was going to crash one way or another. I just didn't expect it to crash directly into me and my business. Last week, one of my nephews, the son of a cousin who lives in another state, came to visit me with his wife and 4-year-old daughter. The little girl tried on like 10 different dresses at the boutique, and her eyes lit up with each one, and her parents ended up buying her 3. Seeing a happy family enjoying something I created, was more satisfying than any apology or recognition I could receive from my parents at this point. That's enough for now, I guess.